Hi, thank you so much for joining me here today on Weekly Wisdom. Again, my name is Damali. I'm with Forerunner Counseling. I'm the founder and the lead counselor there. And for those of you that are just joining me, thank you. Subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you get to know the videos that I'm doing as they upload so that you're up to date. So today I just want to talk to you about staying aligned with your true self. I think, um, some of you have known I'm doing my program Path to Purpose really because even as I've been in counseling for the many years that I have, some of the challenges or the questions people mostly have is to really have that clarity that am I doing what I'm supposed to do? And how do I know that I'm on the right track? How do I get to know that? And sometimes we look at it like it's something that is very foreign, it's far out there, that someone is going to come and tell us what we should be doing. But I just want to share some of the tips that you really have to be mindful so that you don't lose track of yourself and be aligned with your values, aligned with your beliefs, aligned with who you really are, as opposed to always assuming that someone is going to come out from somewhere and tell you. We all know that life can be very challenging, and sometimes people get stuck in the difficulties, in the ebbs and flows of life, and they never know how to recover from that, and then they feel like their life doesn't have any meaning at all. So, what are some of the things that you can do to stay aligned to who you are? Because there is no way you're going to be purposeful in life if you're living a lie, if you're disconnected from yourself, right? So, first of all, your identity has to be in check, meaning that the way you interpret or that way you identify yourself, the way you define who you are, is not as a result of what society tells you you should be. I think that is the gravest mistake we can do. And sometimes even we come from families of origins that don't necessarily see us for who we are, but they project of what we should be based upon how they think we are. And so it's our responsibilities to take that long route of self-discovery, figuring out who we are, our identity, and then stick to those things and be authentic. Otherwise, we're going to live a lie as we interact with people. And so, tip number one you want to be able to stay true to is to never compare yourself to others. Do not think about what others think about you as a determining factor of who you are, because if that's the case, that means you become a chameleon. You change depending on who you're surrounding yourself with. You become whatever they want you to become. Like I know, even as I work with individuals, sometimes you can see how important a relationship can be to someone, and without realizing that persons tend to lose themselves and they modify themselves to accommodate someone else. And I know there is a healthy balance of compromise in relationships, but we also know that sometimes we just get lost in the relationship where we forget what we want, we forget our hobbies, we forget what makes us happy, what makes us feel alive, all in the name of the fact that we want to be in this relationship. So if you want to be authentic and be not live a lie and stay true to who you are, you cannot compare yourself to others. And you have to, almost like they say, like, be comfortable in your own skin, in other words, right? And so that's tip number one. Do not compare yourself to others. Don't worry about what they think. Everyone is always going to have an opinion about who you are, what they think you should be. But if that's the case, if that's how you define yourself, then you're going to always be up and down depending on who you're socializing with. Second thing you want to identify yourself with, or something that you can stay true to, is use a journal. Sometimes I go through challenges in my own individual life. And when I look back in those journals, I can relate to how that felt. It's no longer foreign. I can understand that because I went through it before, I can handle it now. So when you crack a journal, when you keep a journal, you're kind of, everyone is different in how they journal, but I'm not going to give all the details of what I write when I journal. But to the most part, the things that are important to me, the things that are monumental, the things that are experiences when I'm journaling, going through day by day, what really stood out for me in that day, and I write about it, and I write about it. But with time, I realize sometimes the experiences that you go through repeat themselves in different cycles. And you don't want to lose track of that stuff, because when the hardships especially come, those are the moments you appreciate your journal, because you may not necessarily have a physical person that may relate to what you're dealing with, but the journal may be a reminder that you've been through this before and you definitely can handle this time. So don't freak out, you'll be okay. Okay. And so make use of your journal, the things that make you happy, so that you remember. Sometimes when you go through those blows in life and you forget the good things, the journal can help you remember some of the good things that you can do, right? And I'm sure some of you can relate to that. And bounce out of challenging times, right? Another thing you can do is, in efforts to stay true to who you are, is identify your needs. I think we live in a society where some people have a hard time needing, it's not easy to need or to rely on. And I'm not talking about being codependent either. I'm just talking about being able to need, like, I need rest. I need to go out and eat. I need to go out and socialize. I need to go do something exciting. I need to do something physical. Be able to know what you want, and also be in position to know how to ask for it. Even if it's in a relationship, even if it's with friends and you're like, listen, guys, I need to take a break and I'm gonna disappear for like a day or two. I'm not talking about disappearing for years, because sometimes you never come back and that can create new problems. And so anyway, know what you need and know how to ask for it. Sometimes people don't know how to help you if you don't communicate what you need, and they don't know what you need. Like, I remember I had a situation where the person felt like they were suffering in silence, but they had a hard time expressing that because they didn't think anyone would be there for them. So instead of articulating what they needed, and their friends were more than willing to be there for them, but if you don't ask for the things that you need, then you're going to create narratives and schemas in your mind that are not necessarily healthy. And this this is, I was gonna go into a bunny rabbit trail, but talking about the different states of mind when we create narratives that are coming from our traumas, that cannot be healthy, especially when you're trying to be intentional in the way you're living, and it can be self-sabotaging. Okay, another thing that you want to be mindful, and by the way, for some of you that have not heard about my program, Path to Purpose, I really encourage you to reach out to me or go to my website and click the link. You'll be able to have access to that information about my program and helping you finding a life of meaning and purpose, because we all want to have the assurance that when we die, right, that we have lived intentional, we have lived a life that we are proud of. We just don't want to be uh, hoping that we did the right thing. We want to actually do those things that we know we are created to do on this earth, so that it doesn't come as a surprise. And so I know I used to volunteer with Heartspace, and the reason why I volunteer was because I experienced that near death, or being in your final moments and you're thinking about your life. And sometimes people die with regrets. But if you don't want to live in regrets, you have to be intentional in the way you're making decisions now. And that's why you cannot afford to sacrifice who you are because you want to be approved of by people. You want people to accept you. And so I'm just wanting to encourage you that this is a continuous day-by-day journey. This is something that we all participate in, with the challenges that life throws at us, to remain true to who we are, because sometimes you get stuck and get lost. So you need to learn to follow your heart, right? I don't know how many of you have heard of that poem that says the road less traveled, that when you get to the fork, you can take the road less taken. And sometimes not sometimes, life goes through the ebbs and flows. We go through the hardships and we go through the exciting moments of life. But you need to know that when you go through places you've never been through before, do you know how to take risks? But how do you take risks if you're disconnected from yourself? You want to be able to align your values, your beliefs to who you are, so that you're in position to jump if you have to jump. But you're not jumping to concrete, you're jumping on a safer place because that risk is how we make transitions and that's how we make changes. And I know sometimes changes are not easy. I've been through many of those changes, and sometimes it feels like it's very challenging or difficult to process or to navigate. Sometimes you lose relationships, sometimes you lose friends, sometimes you lose jobs, sometimes you lose money. Sometimes you have to completely go into a different land, continent, and different dynamics. But the ability to make those changes and to get away from a comfort zone, it comes from the ability of knowing what is aligning with you, that you're following what is in your heart. You cannot follow someone else's heart. They're going to do what they feel in their heart they are called to do. You also have to follow what's in your heart to do, as opposed to always following somebody else or assuming that someone is going to almost tell you what you should be doing, right? And be understanding. You're human, and I think when it comes to transitions, one of the things that I would say that would stand out, because as personally, when I make changes, changes are very gradual. They are not drastic. And yes, sometimes they could be, but to the most part, for me, they have been mostly gradual. And be kind to yourself to understand that sometimes the changes that you're going to want to make are going to take time. Like if you want to move out of the country, that's not a change that you can make spontaneously like that. There's so many things that you have to put together to make that happen. So give yourself a break, and just be mindful that everyone's journey is very different. Your journey may not look like somebody else. So that's why you don't want to compare yourself. If you want to be authentic, if you want to be true to yourself, you cannot compare your life or yourself to somebody else's. You have to be true to yourself. And what if the changes happen? I've been in situations where I knew I had to move on, but the people that I was with were not ready for me to move on. And I had to accept that grief and process that grief so that you can get to the other side. I'm sure many of you can relate. You have lost your friends, not because you don't have friends anymore. It's kind of like we had to move. I remember there was a season in my life where almost all my friends moved out of state. It was not an easy journey because it's like, okay, am I supposed to move or do I stay here? But I knew I had to, it wasn't for me to move, but you could feel the transition, the dynamics of your relationships change, in that you used to see them in person. Now, in order to talk to them, you either have to FaceTime them or you have to get them on the call as opposed to meet up for lunch or something like that. And so if you follow your heart, you will find those risky spaces and you will learn how to jump so that you don't feel stuck, because sometimes the misery comes from feeling that we shouldn't move anywhere and where we are is no longer working. Be comfortable to follow your heart. The other thing you want to learn to do is to remember the things that you like. Sometimes when I go through challenges in my life, and it feels like it's taking forever to get out of those spaces, I just remember what I like to do and I do those things. And so my encouragement to you is be mindful and be attuned to the things that make you come alive so that when you're in those funks, you know how to get out of them because of the things that you do, right? Get to know yourself. I can't emphasize this enough. Getting to know you is very fundamental. Spend time with yourself. Again, there's so much I want to share in this topic, but I don't want to be all over the place. Um, when you get to know yourself, you know why you do the things that you do, and you're also in position to sit with yourself and process your emotions. Many people have a hard time sitting with how they feel. They want to run from them and because it's unbearable and they don't want to be reminded of things that they are not necessarily proud of. All of us have things that we don't like about what we go through or how we process life, but when you reprocess, you come to peace. You come to terms with it is what it is, kind of a day, not in a harsh way, but more in a very understanding uh, way that you can be able to move past the past and not feel like you're stuck. Every time you shame yourself, you guilt yourself, you criticize yourself, and you don't want to do that. Know yourself enough to know that when I get disappointed, I try to isolate myself, or when I get discouraged, I just don't want to talk to anyone, and I just want to talk to everybody so that I don't have to feel it and just busy myself, and sometimes I just get angry at everything or everyone. And get to know you to that degree so that if someone was to get to talk to you, the way you describe yourself will be very articulate, that no one can beat that. Okay, so again, in your journey to being true to who you are, being true to yourself, being authentic, this is something that we do consistently, right? Society is not out there for your own interest as much as you want to believe otherwise. Everything in life is almost designed to make you conform to something that you're not. It takes a lot of intentionality. You have to fight to stay true to yourself. It's so easy. How many of you are in jobs or corporate jobs to the most part? You take on the culture in the corporation so that you can exist. Because if you fight against that culture, then you don't belong. You don't want to, in other words, to be able to find yourself in spaces where you can fit as you without trying to conform or bend over backwards, it also depends on how true you are to yourself. Because a lot of people, again, I can understand, for the sake of getting paid, for the sake of not being rejected or not being alone, you bend over backwards to accommodate. But many times, if you lose yourself, if you lose your soul, what do you have? Really, what do you have? Your soul is composed of your will, your emotions, your mind. You have to be integrated as you. You cannot take on everyone that is pulling at you to become what they want you to become, because it's not sustainable. So spend time with yourself so that you know who you are, know what your limits are, know when you're getting out of control. Not out of control like in a negative way, but you're losing yourself. There is this exercise that I give my clients. It's called I'm Not in Kansas Anymore. The exercise is to help you to train to understand when you're disconnecting from you. Now, for those of you that have never done it, if you work with me, just reach out to me and I'll help you to navigate that exercise. In other words, let's say my friend is asking me to go out to eat. And I said, okay, let's go out to eat. But then I realized I had an important meeting that I had to, but I'm also saying yes to the meeting. I'm gonna feel that I'll feel that conflict. Maybe if I'm not that connected to myself, I'll be oblivious that I even have a meeting because I'm just getting caught up. Oh, it's my friend, let's go out to eat. But if you are attuned to yourself, you will feel those signals emotionally. You understand, okay, someone gives you a call and they're going on and 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 on, and you're like, okay, this is taking more than time that I wanted to spend on the call. You're gonna feel that. So do you know how to set the limit, your boundary, and say, you know what, I have to go. I cannot be on this call. If someone calls you, and I think we can all attest to this, we have people, maybe we ourselves do it to other people. We call and we just vent. You vent, you vent, you vent. Sometimes the person is not in position to hear your venting because they have their own stuff going on. But if you stay with yourself, you will realize that you can handle things that you didn't think that you're capable of handling. And so I think for me, one of the greatest challenge, it's not a challenge to me. I'm grateful that my experience of almost dying gave that to me. Because when you're dying, it really doesn't matter who your friends are. It doesn't matter how many clothes or it really, all these things that we think are important, they really don't matter, because you came here naked and you're gonna leave this planet naked you came and naked you shall return. What gain is it to have all of these things that the world has to offer? And I'm not saying these things are bad, but you have to put them in comparison to who you are. Is it worth your soul? Is it worth you giving over your will, your peace, your mind? Is it really worth it? That you have to stay true to who you are. And you're going to realize that on that space, it really takes a lot of courage, the decisions you make. I remember when I was going for my master's, everyone told me that what's the point of doing your master's? You're an immigrant, no one knows you, and your accent and all these limitations that the world is going to throw at you. But you know what's inside of you, you know what's resonating with you, and you don't want to lose that. So being true to those spaces is an ability that keeps you grounded so that you can continue to grow and continue to understand what makes you feel fulfilled or what makes you aligned with your own self. So my encouragement to you is that keep growing, keep searching, keep aligning, stay true to who you are so that you can grow. Okay, so thank you so much for tuning in. Again, subscribe, forward to your friend, and get that notification bell. Thank you.